This tutorial will be covering the advanced features of NestDrop Midnight Edition. This is the professional edition of NestDrop, which includes features useful for performing live. If you have a MIDI controller, then you can use it to trigger presets or control many different aspects in NestDrop. NestDrop recognizes three types of MIDI messages: the notes, the control messages, and the MIDI clock. Here are the steps necessary to set up a MIDI controller to use in NestDrop. First, go into the MIDI tab of the settings window. Plug in a MIDI controller into the computer and make sure it appears within the MIDI device section. Drag and drop a MIDI device into an empty queue window. Trigger the pads, piano keys, knobs, sliders, or MIDI clock on your physical MIDI controller, and it will be automatically detected and added into the queue window. Now you're ready to MIDI map. Drag and drop presets, sprites, or text buttons into the MIDI note buttons of the MIDI queue window. The MIDI note buttons can be recognized by the N at the top. Also, the hotkey spacebar, backspace, delete, and auto change can be mapped by dragging and dropping a MIDI note onto the dedicated area at the bottom of the MIDI tab. If your MIDI controller has pads or keys that are velocity sensitive, then you can modulate the velocity value by pressing hard or soft. A preset hard cut will occur if the MIDI note velocity is above the set threshold. If below, then the transition time will be used instead. In other words, if you hit a pad hard, then the preset will transition instantly. Or if you hit a pad softly, then the preset will transition smoothly. You can map the deck effects or the beat threshold by dragging and dropping the MIDI control buttons onto the sliders in the settings window. The control buttons can be recognized by the C at the top. Lastly, if a MIDI clock is detected, then it will appear in the MIDI queue window. Drag and drop the MIDI clock onto the BPM label to link it for the auto change feature. If you have a MIDI controller used by NestDrop, and yet you would like to have other software also receive these MIDI messages, then you can create a virtual MIDI device and select it as an output device here and use it within the other piece of software. If you'd like to full screen the visuals directly from NestDrop, open up the settings window to the Decks tab and then select a monitor from the deck output listing. Now the visuals will be full screened. Note that the full screen image will fill the screen, but it will respect the original aspect ratio by adding black columns to the sides if the ratio of the monitor and the source are different. If you accidentally select your main monitor where the NestDrop library window is located, just hit Alt-Tab to focus on the settings window and then disable the full screen. Here is where you can select an audio device that you want NestDrop to use for the reactive visuals. This allows you to select things such as a webcam, line-in, microphone, audio interface, or whatever source you have in mind, and have live music drive the NestDrop visuals. Note that the change will only be reflected after the decks are restarted. just close the deck window and it will automatically restart. If this option is left blank, then NestDrop will use whatever is listed as the Windows default audio output. What is a sprite? The sprite feature allows you to display any image in the foreground while the visuals run. The sprites can fade in and out, animate around, respond to the music, and so on. You can define up to 100 different special instructions in a file within the plugins directory. This adds a great deal of flexibility to what you can do with the sprites. To quickly activate a sprite directly into a deck, you can simply click on a sprite button. As you hover over a sprite button, then you will see the overlay and nested text on the button. If you click on the overlay part of the button, then it will show the sprite on top of the rendered visuals. But if you click on the nested bottom half of the button, then it will use the sprite within the actual rendering process. You can activate up to 30 sprites simultaneously by holding the Control key while clicking on a sprite button. You can even activate the same sprite multiple times. You might notice that the first time an image sprite is activated, then the deck visuals will freeze. The image is being loaded into memory and then fed into the Milkdrop engine, causing it to freeze. So if you wish to avoid this freeze, then prior to performing, you should manually activate each image sprite that you wish to use. The special instructions, effects, allow you to apply different animations and blend modes to a sprite. The effects number 0 is the default until the user applies a different effects. You can quickly try out different effects by hovering the mouse cursor over a sprite, holding the Control key, and then scrolling the mouse wheel. Another technique to apply effects is to type in a 2-digit number into the hotkey text box and then drag and drop it onto a sprite button. You can import your own images by placing them into the sprites folder. Only JPEG and PNG file formats are supported. The images within this folder are indexed just like the preset section and are shown within the sprites category of the NestDrop library. The image sprites have their own unique collection of effects, which can be found here. You can edit the effects or create your own by editing this file. Also, the file can be edited while NestDrop is open. You just need to re-trigger the sprite between edits. To learn more about sprite effects, check out the in-depth user manual dedicated to sprites. Spout sprites have all of the same features as image sprites. The main difference is that instead of using a static image, they utilize a real-time Spout video stream. So any Spout video streams created by the NestDrop decks or other Spout video streams created by other applications will automatically be listed within the Spout Sprites category. This enables some useful setups, such as you can crossfade or mix together different decks directly in NestDrop. You can create a feedback loop within a single deck in NestDrop. You can play back a video from a Spout video player and see it interacting within the active preset of the NestDrop deck. Within the settings window, be sure to experiment with the Spout Sprite Alpha slider. When using a deck as a Spout Sprite, you can control the amount of transparency of the Spout Sprite by adjusting these sliders. For example, if you use Deck 2 as a Spout Sprite in Deck 1, changing the alpha slider of the Deck 2 section will change how much the Deck 2 sprite is mixed into Deck 1. This is useful for mixing together several deck visuals, crossfading between different deck visuals, or controlling a feedback loop. Note that the decks are not only fading in and out, but they are also part of the preset drawing process of the destination deck. So you can use it to create a totally new effect by merging together multiple preset visuals. Due to a limitation in the Milkdrop engine, the Spout Sprite Alpha slider will only be effective if you're using effects utilizing Blend Mode 4. Spout sprites also have their own unique collection of effects, which can be found here. You can now add text messages into an empty queue window and have it become a button that can be activated repeatedly. Simply type some text into the hotkey text box and then hold the Control key while dragging and dropping the text into an empty queue window. Text buttons can make use of hotkeys, comments, effects, and MIDI. You can also hold Control and use the mouse wheel to scroll through the effects. Yet again, the text messages have their own unique collection of effects, which can be found here. To learn more about the text messages, check out the in-depth text messages user manual within the NestDrop folder. You can add your own comments into the preset and sprite buttons, and it will be visible as green text within the button. This is useful in several different aspects, such as reminders of what you enjoy about a specific preset, performance timings to watch out for, and creating your own searchable tags. Type some text into the hotkey text box and then hold the Control key while drag and dropping the text onto a button. Or you can drag and drop directly if the text contains a space or if the text contains a colon. If you add a comment onto a button which already has a comment, then the old comment will be overwritten. Type a single space into the hotkey text box and then drag and drop it onto a button. Now the comment will be removed. All of the comments in the library window are considered when a search is conducted, so you can use the comments as a way of tagging presets with your own unique tags. The comment will follow when a button is copied from the library into a queue window, but the comment is automatically removed when the button is copied. You can have duplicate copies of the same button, but with different comments. So that's a summary of some of the advanced features of NestDrop Midnight Edition. I hope you learned a little bit of how to use it for your own performances, and I wish you luck.